Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios. This is episode number 80, Trace. It is episode number 80. We have that's a big number.
I know you
get
like
excited.
The fives and the zeros.
I do, but 80 is something, I think. 80th episode. Not even bringing in the live stuff and everything else. It's just the 80th episode of the actual podcast.
And you've been here for all of them.
I have, and you've been here for most of them.
Getting there.
Pretty much most of them.
You know where I was yesterday and where you were yesterday and 43,915 other people were yesterday?
Our closest friends were?
They were at the debut of one Mackenzie Milton, and I dare say, in the years ahead, that number of people who will say that they were there and that they saw the second coming of Johnny Football will rise. There will be more people that claim they saw his debut than were actually there at Bright House.
That's true. I think that, I think it was pretty good. My voice is a little rough today, of course, still.
Was there a ref or two you were yelling at?
Oh, man. I think a lot of people were yelling at the refs. In fact, I don't think people were even paying attention to half the time of what was going on the game. They were excited watching Scott Frost yell at him. I know that the crowd was cheering, for him. I know they were because I was watching it, and when he really got up in the one guy's face,
he's got a facial expression, doesn't he?
Oh man, he was on fire. I thought he was going to get kicked out. They can do that now. They can give the coaches technical fouls in college football. The new rule this year, and they can warn them twice, and then they kick them out on the second one, I guess.
You sound better than I would dare say half a dozen or more Maryland football players are feeling the day after that game.
Yeah.
Did we not put a beating on them?
We did. I mean,
they were gingerly lifting off these big guys off the field. They were really knocked around. We should
have won that game. Maryland won 30, UCF 24.
Double
overtime. If we wouldn't have had a few mistakes,
half a dozen fumbles,
right? I don't think that would have been the outcome. You can't really fault Mackenzie Milton, I don't think, being his first college start and just the aggressive type of ball handling that he does. I don't think that this has been a problem of his in the past, though. Or he wouldn't be here all the way from, Hawaii. I don't think that is something that he has been plagued with. It honestly didn't seem to bother him very much in the press
really
conference.
Seemed to bother him very much.
It seems like, he's very, very calm, cool, and collected, which is incredible for a quarterback. That's the way you want him. You don't want him to get flustered. You want him to just go on, hey, we made a mistake, and learn from it and, fix it the next time.
Didn't he come across during the game watching him like he did when we spoke with him at Media Day? Just kind of a laid-back, go-with-the-flow kind of kid.
He's from Hawaii.
He was just
number one. I mean,
right?
that's the lifestyle there. That's the way that it is. Yeah, and oh, my God. Trace has got this Hawaiian shirt on today, I guess.
You've got to keep one in the back of the closet for just such a moment. Hey, there were people with leis around their neck in the student section and other fans.
I think everybody should have.
We brought a little of Hawaii to the mainland.
I think that they should have gotten everybody a lei and put it on them as they were coming in the stadium.
Yeah, it's a shame that this is not a Facebook Live kind of moment.
Yeah, because, man, that looks like Jimmy Buffett should be wearing it or something. It's pretty bad.
Hey, you know who's back this week? One Kyle Israel, former UCF quarterback, who is really going to take us inside and talk about what goes on in the mind of a freshman quarterback, because he's experienced this same thing, Andrew.
He has been there in the exact same stadium doing it. So, yeah. I'm very, very happy to have him back. It's been difficult getting him on the phone because he's been busy with his restaurants and all that stuff, which I completely understand. So we will talk about that and a lot more. So I've got some audio, though, to play. I've got Scott Frost and his opening statement. And I think that He looked like I'll just set the tone for this. If you haven't seen this video, he looked like he was going to cry. I mean, really looked like he was going to cry. He was very upset. So let's hear what he had to say after the game.
I'm brokenhearted for our kids. They've worked their tails off. I told them before the game they were poised and ready to knock off a team that nobody or very few people thought they could beat. We had our chances in this one. Give a ton of credit to Maryland. They're kind of trying to do the same thing we are in rebuilding a program. I think DJ's done a great job, but we had a lot of chances to finish it, to score early, to make it a different game, and I'm hurting for our kids that we didn't get it done.
Oh, what a difference that is from other head coaches that we have had. That right there says a lot to me.
Big difference week to week from the Michigan game to the Maryland game. And we lamented for some time last week that the combination of Justin Holman and Nick Patty just 6 of 22. In this game, Mackenzie Milton, 21 of 36, 260 yards, the 2 touchdowns. He had that beautiful 71-yard completion to Jordan Akins. And he also had a rushing touchdown, which, by the way, puts UCF at 5 rushing touchdowns on the year. And that's pretty nice because that surpasses 2015's 4. Total of 4. And you broke down the rushing numbers last week. We're close to eclipsing last year's season total before we even get to the halfway mark.
Yeah, and I'm not looking at the net yards when I'm saying that, by the way, because somebody pointed that out to me. So we rushed for 259 yards, but the net out of that was 195 that we, I guess, got credit for. Still, another 259 yards or 195 yards, rushing as well. Mackenzie Milton accounting for 62 of those yards. So Jawan Hamilton, 67, Adrian Killen, 62.
We got more of the fast, though, in this game against Maryland than we saw develop in the Michigan game.
Absolutely, and they opened it up for Milton because he can run what's going on there. He's familiar with this offense. He's studied it. He's played in it in his high school. In fact, I guess we pre-recorded Kyle's interview, and I said this there, but I'm going to say it again. I watched Mackenzie Milton's high school tape, his highlight reel, before I left to go to the game yesterday, just because I wanted to remember what I saw, number one, and I wanted to see if what we were going to see in the game at UCF against Maryland was anything like what I remember seeing on the tape. And it was virtually identical, except not quite as many throws downfield, but it was a highlight tape, of course, and I say that in the interview with Kyle as well. But you get what you get with him. I think that it's only going to get better. I mean, yes, the fumbles. Got to fix that. But
in the words of George O'Leary, that's correctable, right? The fumbles are correctable.
Absolutely. And Scott Frost talked about it as well. Here's Scott Frost talking about the last play of the game, which was another fumble, and kind of a weird one.
I think he was trying to throw it away, and it kind of slipped out of his hand, and where he released it to where it landed, it went backwards. So that's considered a fumble. That's the biggest thing we need to go back to work on is we're beating ourselves a little bit with turnovers. We had way too many today. You have a bunch of young guys playing, that's going to happen, but we got to do better than we did.
So there you go. We got to do better than we did. So
8 different guys catching passes, a big jump in improvement from the previous week's loss against Michigan. By the way, Mackenzie Milton's listed on the depth chart as 5'11", 170. I also like, by the way, that we have a guy on defense and a guy on offense with number 10 now.
Yeah.
Right?
So, too, yeah, that white jersey that I have, the number 10 white jersey that I guess anybody has is the number 10. And
it can be Shaquille Griffin one time, and it can be Mackenzie Milton another time.
Absolutely. Depends on what side of the ball you're on. All right, so let's hear from Mackenzie Milton on his first college start.
Hey, how about a nice Hawaiian punch?
Sure. What gives Hawaiian punch its punch? It's punch.
I mean, early we kind of struggled getting some things going, but I feel like throughout any game, like you start to get more comfortable as the game goes on. I mean, that's just how I am. But I mean, we need to start a lot faster come next week and come following weeks, because I feel like if we started faster, we would have had a better chance to win this game.
An appearance from the Hawaiian Punch Man, too.
Circa 1978. It's
awesome.
amazing what you can find on the internet. I also like that Mackenzie now, after just one start, has his own little intro sound.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and then we've got another one here from Mackenzie on the fumble at the end of the game, and then one after that of the support from Justin Holman and the other guys.
He kind of drew up a sprint out to the right, trying to leak out the tight end to the backside. I felt as if he was covered, and I just looked, try to see if he was open, and just kind of slipped out. I don't really know. Those guys had my back, full support, gave me advice when I come to the sideline, what coverages they saw and stuff like that, what they thought might be open. A couple mistakes I made, like they helped me with that. So they've been fully supportive. This entire week.
All right, so there you have it from Mackenzie Milton. He seems very just mellow, and it's a good thing. Definitely a good thing for a quarterback. We shall see, I guess, if we'll see him again next week. I would think I think you'd be crazy not to. I don't think that Justin Holman, nor Nick Patty, or Tyler Harris, or Pete DeNovo could have done half as much as Mackenzie Milton did last night.
I had to jot this down, and I know it's a family-friendly program, so I won't include the expletive in this quote, but the guy next to me in the game said, I love this blank, in reference to the entertainment that he was watching, the show that was being put on. Fourth down plays. They went for a fourth down and one at their own 11, right?
Yeah, you don't do that. You don't normally
It's against
do that.
everything conventional, and that just continues to reinforce as we get through 3 games in this season that, they're still knocking off the rust from last year. But this is a completely different team, even though a lot of those players are the same players. And really, the defense kept us in that game for the longest time, despite the mistakes. They limited Maryland's quarterback, 2 quarterbacks. The one that came in overtime, but he didn't really do much of anything but run for the rushing touchdown.
That won the game.
Yeah, except for that. They only threw for 127 yards. And let's not forget, while they were 3-9 last year, and they are now 3-0, this is still a Big 10 caliber team with big bodies on the lines, and I thought UCF's defense hung in there and kept them in the game when those mistakes were turning the ball over and sometimes giving Maryland a shorter field than they needed.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your good, bad, and ugly from Maryland at UCF.
Well, certainly. How could you not? I know there's some detractors on the message boards about Mackenzie Milton, but we haven't had that level of excitement in some time, and that's something that we get into a little bit more with Kyle. Just the whole, I didn't know what to expect next, and that was what was so exciting about it, right? You didn't know what was going to happen. That was certainly, I appreciate the running game chipping away, and that we were able to do more with that running game, and you see those little flashes of speed, the Adrian Killens. It's exciting. And then the shout out to the defense. I also think that the sacks and the pressure that they put on Maryland's quarterback was a big part of that game.
Defense is night and day.
And again, essentially the same people.
Yep.
Right? So the attitude, the enthusiasm of the team is so much more different. And, we're only 3 weeks away from saying, well, will they get to 6 wins? And we still don't know that they will get to 6 wins. But, boy, I feel a lot more confident about getting to 6 wins or more and a bowl trip, even if it's local, perhaps at the Cure Bowl at Camping World Stadium, than I did with the uncertainty of knowing what we were going to do. I know it's 1-2. They're 1-2. They're going to play FIU. They lost to FIU last year, but it just feels better.
Absolutely.
Right?
I agree 100%.
And then some of these things. Bad, I'll tell you what, at least through the first couple of games, too many dumb penalties. It kills momentum.
Well, and, okay, here we go. This is what I tweeted out a message last night after the game. Be sure and tune in because I'm pissed off. I'm not so pissed off now. I'm still pretty pissed off, but I'm not nearly as pissed off as I was then. I wanted you all to know, though, that follow us on Twitter.
At
that you
UCF _
yeah,
Knightline.
Yeah, UCF _ Knightline on Twitter. That, I'm not the only one, obviously, but this referee stuff has got to stop. It seems like this year, and I don't know if it's because we've had these last 2 games with the Big 12, the Big 10 referees, but it's horrible. We're not getting any calls. There was at least 4 pass interferences that
watch
did not
that
get
right
called.
down. Go back and watch the end of that game. How was that a second one? Both of them, really. But how was the second one not
And then
pass
what a
interference?
lot of people aren't realizing as well, when Mackenzie Milton fumbled that ball at the very end of the game, there was pass interference on Jordan Akins in the end zone along with that, and a face mask at the exact. He was pass interference the entire time, and then he face masked him and almost pulled him to the ground at the end.
I'm gonna go back and
Rewind
look at that.
and watch that, because that's what was going on there. So they didn't see that, but they decided to pick apart this fumble, which, whatever, it's a fumble. It went backwards. It was a really weird thing. It just, I wish he could have caught that, and he would have caught his own pass and ran it in or something, but whatever, hindsight's 20/20. Anyway, these officials, I mean, I don't know if we have to pay one of them to, like, somebody's paying
we're not
them.
paying enough.
Somebody's paying them.
We're not paying enough.
I mean,
we don't have that Power 5 money to pay them properly.
Yeah, I also heard that they were out of there in like 60 seconds last night with a police escort and everything else, because they knew they were probably going to get, knifed or something in the parking lot. I don't know.
Lord, I hope not at Bright House Network Stadium.
I
share your concern about the calls or lack of calls in some cases, but still UCF is making too many of its own mistakes.
Yeah, but also, though, when the referees don't call the mistakes, the actual penalties that are going on the field, so you can't win when they won't call what's going on there. I mean, they're the ones that are supposed to keep the game fair, and they're the ones that are calling. They're making games not turn out the way that they should have because they're missing their calls and they're not doing their jobs. Period. They're not doing their jobs. It's not the first game. It's not going to be the last game in college football this year, but this year is particularly bad with referees. I don't care what league, what division, what conference you're in. The referees have been horrible this year.
Let's rewind, though, to the fumble, that last fumble. UCF had a 1st and goal and could not punch it in, right, before that fumble comes.
Yeah,
so
we were working on it.
I know, but that gets lost now. You lose that. We couldn't get those last couple of yards in that drive.
Well, that's when everybody puts their nose to the grindstone, and those are the most important plays of an entire 4-hour game. So
and of course it's easy for us and others to second guess head coach Scott Frost. You'll note in week 1 of the NFL, the Oakland Raiders were at the New Orleans Saints. They scored late and they went for 2, got it. Beat the Saints on the road. People bringing up that when UCF scored, they should have gone for 2. Imagine if that doesn't go well. Imagine if that doesn't go well.
No,
they're really going to be upset with Scott Frost.
Not at all. Right now, at this point, worried about what Scott Frost is doing and what he's not doing, as far as play calling or whoever's calling the plays. I'm not at all one of those people, and I think that that's bad if you are doing that personally. I don't think anybody should be judging anything but what he's putting on the field, because he's putting a lot more quality than we had last year on the field already, and I think that's what he should be being judged on, and not people picking apart his plays. Anybody out there that's not been a head coach in college football shouldn't even be thinking about that.
If they don't succeed, he goes for 2 there and doesn't succeed. Oh my! Can you imagine the meltdown that would be going on? Why didn't he kick the extra point? Why did he? Right, he's in a no-win position there. They score, they kick the extra point. We end up at overtime.
Let Scott Frost be the coach. That's all I have to say about that. I mean, whatever. If you all want a Monday morning quarterback,
or Tuesday when you're listening to this, or
Wednesday, or whatever. I mean, we're not trying to do that. I mean, I especially am not trying to be, the Monday morning quarterback and or Monday morning head coach. It's not. I don't think it's time for that. We can do that later. Give him,
more than 3 games.
More than 3 games before you pick him apart. And I haven't seen much of that, but the ones that are need to stop.
Overall, though,
that's my
electric atmosphere, though, wasn't it, in Bright House Network
It was
Stadium?
awesome. I mean,
it didn't go the way we wanted, but we saw a lot of promise and more development of players, and I really feel like we were a part of something special at that game with the debut of Mackenzie.
I mean, if it would have turned out different, it would have, I guess, you would have a lot less of that second guessing and all that, but it didn't. And, I have faith in Coach Frost and the rest of the staff that they're going to get this together. And, I feel much more optimistic about everybody says bowl game. That's what they want to concentrate on. So I feel much more optimistic that we can have a winning season. But we've got to get it together quick. We've got to get these. We made big progress by putting Mackenzie Milton in there, but next week has to be a lot different. We have to go and crush FIU. We just have to crush them.
Early line, couple-point favorite for UCF. I think it's 3 is the initial line.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, but that's on the road.
Yeah.
UCF's favored on the road in Week 4. Right? How often did that happen in the 2015
We
season?
just need to go in there because they've gotten crushed, and, they're going to have that on their side as well, that they've gotten crushed a couple times, so they're going to be fighting and clawing.
This is a big game for them.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see them put up nearly as much of a fight as the last 2 opponents that we've played, though.
Well, to that point,
obviously.
right? We go into the season hoping to get that win over South Carolina State, but don't you mark that down as we're going to beat South Carolina State. You know that we're going to lose at Michigan. After the performance at Michigan, where we saw certain things we liked, we thought we might be able to beat Maryland. And you know what? We nearly did. But we would have predicted 1-2 at this point, wouldn't we?
Any game that goes into double overtime is a little bit of a weird thing anyway. Just the fact that it was tied up, at the end, that says that we were very equal with them.
We were
extremely equal. We were equal, tied up at the end of regulation. That means that we were equals at that point. So.
And 2 weeks ago, Maryland went down to Miami, beat FIU 41-14. So if you're looking for a barometer of how each FIU and UCF played Maryland, there's your back-to-back weeks. Give you an indication of what we may expect to see in Miami on Saturday night.
Speaking of in Miami on Saturday night, check this out. Coast to coast,
and even north of the border in Canada.
Hello, Night Nation. I'm Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trylko. Tell your friends about Knightline Post-Game Live. It's the only place to talk about UCF's latest road game as soon as the game ends.
We're taking your calls live, so save our number in your phone's contacts, 407-205-7427. That's 407-205-7427.
Join the conversation with Knights fans across the country. Download the Rabble.tv app today and listen in. Remember, when the clock expires, we go live.
Knightline Postgame Live, your place to talk UCF football with 2 of the biggest UCF fans around.
Go Knights!
Charge on. All right, so that will be September 24th, next Saturday night at 10:30 is the time that I put up on Rabble.tv to start that. In case we go into double overtime or something crazy like that, it will be starting exactly when the game ends. Trace will be joining me on the phone from there.
I anticipate being down in Miami for the game, yeah.
And then we will do that on Rabble.tv again. And last time it was awesome, and I hope that, this time, of course, is going to be a little bit later at night, but everybody's still going to be wound up about the game, I'm sure. So
yeah, download the app onto your phone.
Yeah, download it.
So you can listen when you're leaving the stadium or, for any,
it'll work on the Bluetooth on your phone, on your car, or you can plug it in, and do it that way. You can listen to us on the way home if you're going down there. And maybe call in as well. You'll have to disconnect from the show to call in, of course, unless you're using your buddy's phone or whatever. But you can download the Rabble.tv app, RABBLE.tv, on the Apple iTunes Store or the Google Play Store and have that on your phone. Or you can go to Rabble.tv on your computer and talk to us, call in. We will be here to discuss the game with you. Welcome to Inside the Huddle with former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, brought to you by the Little Greek Fresh Grill. Fresh, flavorful, fabulous. Waterford Lakes, 855 North Althea Trail, Orlando.
We're all talking about Mackenzie Milton's debut at quarterback for the Knights. Let's look at it through the eyes of former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, who's stopping by Knightline to talk about the Maryland game. Hi, Kyle. How you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you guys doing this evening?
Wonderful. So, Kyle, what did you think of Mackenzie Milton's first college football start?
I think it was kind of a mixed bag. I mean, obviously, if you went through it and tried to scrutinize everything, every play, you certainly could find some glaring mistakes if that's what you were looking for. And if you did the opposite and were trying to look for some plays that he made, you're going to find some great ones in that regard as well. You know, I was pleased with Mackenzie's play. I was pleased with Scott Frost to kind of have the courage at this point in the season, at this point in his tenure here at UCF, you know, to really basically say, you know what, this guy may give me the best chance to win. He's probably going to be the guy that has the most impact on our program, or the potential for the most impact on our program from the quarterback position moving forward. And we get a game at night, at home, against Maryland, and we need to put an exciting product on the field. And, you know, I was pleased with him kind of pulling that trigger. Obviously, you know, Mackenzie's going to improve over time. I started some games as a true freshman back in 2004. It's a tough environment to be in, especially at home, especially in front of a big crowd against a Big Ten opponent. I think our offense and the way that we run it now kind of helps that transition a little bit more because you can get the ball out of your hands quicker, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not an easy thing to do, and I know firsthand. So I was, you know, some of those mistakes, they weren't, in my opinion, the type of mistakes that aren't easily correctable. I mean, some of the miscues in the backfield with handoffs and fumbles, you know, that just takes reps. That just takes practice and timing, and you'll kind of see those types of things eliminated, I think. Obviously, the decision-making you know, process takes time to develop, but we're talking about a guy that was a couple thousand miles away not too long ago, 18 years old, and he goes out there at 175 pounds and puts on one of the best shows from a pure enjoyment perspective, in my opinion, since Blake Bortles. So that's basically what I thought about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. It was a hell of a show. Now, the fumbling thing, does that have anything to do maybe with the size of the ball from high school to college? It's a little bit of a different ball in most leagues anyway, from high school to college. And then with his size or anything, does the guy have unusually small hands or something? I mean, what do we got going on here?
You know, I don't think it has anything to do with the size of the football whatsoever. To be honest with you, I have small hands myself, and in regards to, you look at an average Division I quarterback, even though my height and kind of girth were there, I had smaller hands. That doesn't seem to have much of an effect. I really think that, you know, one of the things that you can see, and if you're paying attention closely, is in this Oregon offense, in this Scott Frost offense, even if you go back to the Oregon days, look at where Marcus Mariota and some of those guys handed the ball off to the running backs. It's not a typical kind of low belly type of handoff. It's more up at the chest of the running back so that the running back's eyes don't ever have to come down to the ball. He kind of takes it up there at the top of his chest and then pulls it under either his left or right arm. And that's something I noticed right away, even during the spring game. I'm like, man, the mesh point is higher. So it could be a combination of that and a lot of quarterbacks not used to having that mesh point so high with the running back. And then it could just have been some indecisiveness in regards to whether or not he was trying to decide if he was going to pull or not pull. The running backs recently have been playing with other quarterbacks that were probably more likely to hand the ball off than they were to pull the ball up and around the corner. So I think it's a combination of everything, but I do think those are very easily correctable and probably mistakes that you're not going to see very often from Mackenzie Milton and that running back team here in the future.
When Mackenzie Milton was right, what was he most right on, and what do you see the most upside, continued potential for Mackenzie Milton?
Oh, that's a good question, Trace. I think when you look at his ability to kind of move on, he never really looks rattled. I mean, obviously, if you try to define that by some of the plays that he made or lack thereof, you could say that he was a little bit rattled, but he just seemed cool, calm, and collective the entire game. And he just didn't the game was never too big for him. You know, when you looked at the guy out there, you know, the plays were sometimes boneheaded, but if you go back and look at DeAndre Francois for example, against a Florida State, against a Louisville or against an Ole Miss a couple of weeks ago, when he came over on the sideline and was talking to Jimbo Fisher, he looked kind of like a deer in a headlight. He was trying to figure out what the heck had just happened, what he was seeing. Jimbo Fisher's kind of up in his face saying, what are you looking at, DeAndre? When you look at McKenzie Milton, you never saw that discomfort. And that's what I was looking at more than anything, because for us to judge a guy's career or what he's going to do for this program based off one game, you want to know what somebody said about me? I'll never forget the Central Florida Future said after my first game playing against West Virginia that I was the next Dante Culpepper for UCF. and that's not the guy that I ended up being.
You have that, however, cut out and taped to your wall, right?
Right. So it's hard to make that decision off one game, but I was just most impressed with how he kind of hung in there. He was willing to take a pounding. He took a pounding at his size, and I think he has a great upside. Obviously, you can't make some of the plays. He's kind of like a gunslinger. He runs around. He fits balls into tight spaces that you kind of scratch your head and say, how did that angle of that football get into that receiver? He does all those things, and sometimes when you move to this level in your first game, everybody's moving faster, and some of the things that you could do in high school you just can't do in college, and the same goes with the pros. But he also did some phenomenal things when he got his legs moving and on the run and broke a lot of tackles, so I was very pleased.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the poise of him, because Coach Frost talked about that last night, and he said he's never seen him flustered. He doesn't get flustered, and that's just, a part of who he is, and that's why he loves him. So the other thing was, when I found out yesterday morning that he was starting, I went back and watched his high school highlight reel just to see. I was like, I want to see if we see the same thing, if he's the same player, and he is, without a lot of the long throws that, were on his tape, of course. It's a highlight tape. But he definitely, moved around, took off both directions and ran, and could get those throws in there in the tight spaces like you say. So I'm sold, personally. Where do you think Justin Holman or any of the other quarterbacks fit into this thing now? Do you think that this is McKenzie's ball and he runs with it?
You could tell Coach Frost was being a little bit coy with how he answered some of those questions in the post-game press conference in regards to McKenzie's future. I don't see how you can't, honestly. Obviously, I'm not the coach, but
they burnt the red shirt, so
right. You burn the guy's red shirt. From what I've heard from within, in a fair way, they've always been looking at McKenzie Milton as their guy. In all respect to the other quarterbacks and trying to be as fair as possible to everybody else. You recruited the guy all the way from Hawaii because you thought he was going to bring something to the table, right? And then when you win an MVP at an Oregon camp against 61 other quarterbacks, there's something special about you. So, with that being said, I still wasn't sure how Tyler Harris ended up staying in our program when he could have potentially transferred like Bo Schneider did up to Pittsburgh. And the same goes with Pete DeNovo. They were kind of at ages where they could still kind of look out there and see what the college football landscape or the Division I AA landscape had to offer. And I kind of always thought that was something those two would do. Patty and Holman being older, Nick Patty being from Central Florida, Dr. Phillips and Justin obviously having been the long-term starter at one point in time, I kind of expected them to be around. So, I think what it comes down to is Justin Holman, I noticed last night and was looking for his reactions, and he was extremely supportive. Nick Patty was there, extremely supportive.
I watched that as well.
I think those are the roles that these guys are going to have to play at this point. And if I see another quarterback out there, I'll be a little bit disappointed because, like I said in the first statement, college football is entertainment, and I was absolutely entertained last night and walked out of that stadium obviously disappointed that we had lost, but did not. I don't feel like I had ever seen a full performance with the electricity and the exciting plays and kind of some of the scratching your head at the same time. I hadn't seen a game like that in Bright House Network Stadium in a long time, and certainly not with as dynamic of a quarterback, in my opinion, ever, even going back to Jeff Godfrey and what he was able to do, because there was still kind of a box that he was confined to. He had the speed, he had the athleticism, and he did have an arm. But Mackenzie Milton seems to bring some of the quarterback savviness to the table on top of those things that he already possesses with those physical skills. And I don't think we've ever seen anybody like him in the black and gold before.
Well, one of the cool things and one of the things that I love about him, and he showed it last night during that touchdown run that he had, he can make something out of completely nothing. Like, I thought for sure he was going down, 5 or 10 yards back from the line of scrimmage, and then all of a sudden he's in the end zone. And that is impressive and exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. 1 second, the ball is on the ground next to his left foot. And then it seems like in a second and a half later, he's crossing the goal line for a touchdown. So, I'm not sure there's another guy on the roster. I'm not sure that there's many guys in the past we've had that would have that presence of mind to pick the ball up, get around the edge, and frankly have the speed and get into the end zone. So, yeah, you're exactly right.
I was actually waiting for him to make the little money fingers for the Johnny football, because everybody's calling him that, and it just looked like something that he would have done back in the day. Trace,
yeah, that whole reference, I heard it quite a few times to Johnny football in reference to Johnny Manziel. Let's go back to what you said earlier, though, about all of the things that are going through the mind of a freshman quarterback. Even if he is able to, in short order, correct the fumbling mistakes, what other mistakes might we expect to see a freshman quarterback make down the stretch?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of mistakes that the naked eye couldn't see last night, right, from the stands. We didn't know the play calls. We didn't know the progressions and the reads. I'm sure there's plays in there where there's run and read options where he's deciding whether to hand it off or pull it out and throw the ball based on a particular linebacker's position or their first or second step after the ball is snapped. Those sorts of things that we can't necessarily see. I'm confident that there was probably more mistakes in that realm that probably weren't so glaring to the naked eye, that probably could have impacted the football game one way or another with some different decisions. So, that would be all speculation on my behalf in regards to trying to guess which one of those plays or which plays were kind of affected by some reads or misreads. But I think that those types of things will get polished up as time goes on, as he gets more reps, as he gets comfortable with the wide receiver core. I think if I was a quarterback, in last night's game, I would have been a little bit frustrated because, Maryland, in my opinion, there were certain situations where they did come up and they pressed us, but they always kind of had to seem to have that safety out there lingering over some of our one-on-one matchups. I was waiting for us to take some shots vertically down the field on the sideline. And give credit to Maryland, just all game, they were not going to give that up. And either were jamming us at the line of scrimmage or not getting caught with flat feet and really getting depth by their corners and safeties. So, I know that was probably a little bit frustrating for McKenzie, but he also had that huge pass down the middle. We used to call it in Poland and Russia. We ran that same play. We called it Vegas, where you kind of have the tight end and Jordan Akins screaming across the field. You have the number 2 receiver out of a trips, number 2, screaming down the hash, and then the outside receivers both taking off down the sideline, making a decision of whether or not they want to stop at 14 yards or not based on the leverage of the corner. And he hit Jordan Akins for a 71-yard gain, if you guys remember that, I think there in the third quarter or something. So, those are some good reads right there. But I think that the read, understanding the read, understanding what he's capable of, and understanding what his arm is capable of, all those things are things that you're going to have to play a couple games and get some more reps and practice to really understand what your own capabilities are sometimes. And all of that will ultimately make you more comfortable.
2 weeks ago, Maryland went down to Miami, beat FIU 41-14. Maryland on the way up at 3-0, FIU on the way down at 0-3. That comes at a good time for McKenzie, doesn't it? That he will go on the road to, in all fairness, a less capable team than the Big Ten's Maryland Terrapins.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's going to go into an environment in his first road game, let's quote unquote it, start, if he is the guy that goes in and starts that game, in a FIU stadium that's not overwhelming at all. I don't think the crowd is going to be a huge factor in that game. I don't think that, he's traveling to some big, obnoxious, massive stadium to play in front of 55,000 screaming fans. That's just not what FIU is going to offer. So I do think that is to his advantage. I think the confidence that he had to have had, there was probably a lot of heartbroken players on that team yesterday, but you're walking away from that game and you're saying, you know what, we did not flat out win a game last year, and there was a majority of games we weren't even competitive in. And less than a year later or a year later, we go to a double overtime with a program like Maryland, who's in the Big Ten, who has an up-and-coming coach and some good athletes on their team, and we probably should have won that game. I mean, so I think that if I was McKenzie, I would feel pretty good about myself. Obviously, those mistakes would eat me alive because they're ones that I think are very easily corrected, and you're just playing this what-if game with yourself when you're staring at your ceiling at night, kind of, wishing you could have those plays back. But this environment's the right type of environment for him and his potential second start against a team at the right time where he can really build some confidence.
So, Kyle, this is the first time you've joined us this year. We've been through 3 games now. I know that you went to Michigan and have been at all the other games. What do you think so far, just in general, of what you've seen in changes with the program and where it's going? I mean, Scott Frost, the entire thing.
Well, starting with Scott, obviously, I mean, in business myself, I'm huge on culture. I really think the culture that you set really sets the tone for your business or your program, your sports program, whatever the case may be. How you set that tone with your culture is crucial. And I love what Coach Frost has done with the culture of the program. Really, really investing in the players, really making it, family doesn't seem to be just kind of a fake word with these guys right now. They're kind of all in this together. They all experienced the ups and the downs last year. And you can say that about the true freshmen as well, because let me guarantee you something. When those true freshmen committed to UCF that was 0-12 at the time, that was not an easy thing for those guys to do either. So everybody was impacted by a 0-12 season on some level. And the same goes for Coach Frost. He goes to a school that was 0-12 in the AAC. So I think everybody is kind of on the same page with the same goal. Let's get this program to where we are, playing for championships again. And I think that he's kind of created that with the culture, number one. Number two, our coaching staff is phenomenal. And the time that I've been able to spend in the football facility, which is much easier to do these days in the way that Coach Frost has set this program up, and go out and see some practices. We have a phenomenal assistant coaching staff, and I still haven't learned everybody's names, but from Coach Walters and obviously Coach Becton and our offensive line coach, who I think is just taking an offensive line that the three of us were scratching our heads last year and saying, like,
absolutely,
what is happening?
Yeah, they're night and day.
Yeah, I mean, our offensive line is down the field blocking. Our offensive line is playing nasty. Yes, are they making some mistakes? Of course, but the aggressiveness and the tenacity is there, and that's where it all needs to start. So I'm just so pleased with the assistants on the offensive side of the ball. But then our defense, I cannot believe in my wildest imagination that there's all the same players we had last year. Mm-hmm. Either, that tells me one of two things. Either the team had a lot of quit in them last year and just were not giving us everything that they had, or two, they just didn't know how to be motivated or weren't being motivated the right way. I think it was a combination of all, and let's kind of crinkle that up into a ball and kind of leave it there. But they have brought an extra level of energy. I think that the comfort that they can kind of play within themselves and be individuals on the field in regards to the comfort of knowing that their coach is going to have their back if they make a mistake, so you tend to fly around a little bit faster. And if you are making mistakes, you're making them a little bit faster. I mean, I think that the defense is extremely improved on all levels. We have a pass rush. I think that the blitz packages last night a lot of times were perfectly timed, perfectly called, where we were getting pressure when we needed it. Shaquem Griffin is playing phenomenal in those blitzing packages. So I'm just completely shocked from the defensive side of football that those are a lot of, all the same, all but one of the same starters that we had, or players that we had last year. And then, you kind of look at, let's leave the kind of football, all that in one place, and then look at the administration and what Danny White and Jimmy Skiles and a lot of the people inside the administration are doing just on like the fan experience and engagement. I mean, everybody has social media these days, but I feel like over the past 10 years, UCF was way behind in social media presence just because of the engagement, the videos, what you see on social media that kind of keeps you satisfied throughout the course of the week and getting your little 1.5 minute UCF football fix of a video of this or that, or getting into some of the history of the program and Bright House 10-year anniversary, the type of environment that they've created in Iowa Plaza prior to the game, which I would encourage everybody to get out to the night walk at our next home game, as I did yesterday, which hopefully we can start building that crowd around the entrance to the stadium, because that is a huge recruiting tool. And then the number of recruits that you saw on the game yesterday. Obviously, when I went to Clemson last year and I went to some of these other programs and saw games, the music in the stadium seemed like it was starting to be catered to players more than it was catered to the fan. And a lot of times the fans enjoy, whether it's rap or hip hop or whatever the case may be, it's obvious that there's some more of that type of music being played throughout the games. And that's just, I think, targeting recruiting, giving those guys kind of a comfortable atmosphere, and then, kind of giving the players a comfortable atmosphere on the field. I just think the whole game day experience, the whole social media engagement of the program, and obviously with Coach Frost's relationship with Phil Knight and what we've been able to do from a uniform perspective, it's all going in the right direction, guys. It's just it is not going to happen overnight, but last night would have been a great victory for this program, and I still feel really good about the way that we played against the Maryland team that's in the Big Ten and came down here and put on a good show with us.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we're not too many steps away from being a good football team again, and that's huge. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us, Kyle. You've been so busy this year that we've hardly been able to talk to you, but we would have been able to talk about a win at one point, which you still haven't been able to come on here and talk about a win, which is a bummer. But I know you've been busy with the Little Greek. Tell us about what's going on there.
Yeah, so, it seems like time's flown and have been super busy. So we now have 3 locations in Central Florida. One's out in the Loop in Kissimmee, next to the movie theaters. We have one over in Celebration off of 192 by Chick-fil-A and Publix. And then we will have 3 more locations open or nearly open between now and January here in Central Florida. Without being too specific, one would be on the south part of town, one on the very west part of town, and then one a little bit more centrally located in regards to downtown Orlando. So, we're still looking for franchisees. That's something that we're still looking here for Central Florida. We have 13 more licenses available for locations. So that's kind of my push here as I get into the fall, is really to find some people that are looking to get into the franchise world and some of the great things that type of business can provide an individual or a family, or kind of moving on to the next point in somebody's career. This is, one of the 6 best up-and-coming fast casual franchises by MSNBC in 2016. So that's kind of what our push is, but you can find me in the Waterford Lakes locations quite a bit still as we continue to grow, and we had a couple of the Knightline podcast fans come in last year and chop it up with me and talk some UCF football, and I'm always more than open and willing to do that. So you guys know where to find me, and look forward to hopefully getting back on with you guys next Sunday and talking about a victory.
Awesome. Yes, that would be absolutely awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. We won't take up more of your time, but we really, really appreciate it.
All right, guys. Have a good night. I'll be waiting, looking for you guys to post the podcast.
All right.
Go Knights.
Okay. Go Knights.
All right. Another thing that we did this week, that I did early on this, or I guess midweek, I made a bunch of T-shirts, and those are on Zazzle, ZAZZLE.com Knightline if you want to look those up. And I've posted them on Facebook. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/Knightline.
Did they say Phegley for president?
No.
No.
They are, of course, Knightline shirts. One of them, in fact, says Hello Night Nation, which is my, thing that I start out every single thing that we do. And the other one, there's one that just says Knightline. They're available in white and black, some with the logo on there, some without. So get on there on Zazzle.com, and you can see what we made up there. It will help us out a little bit. We don't get a lot of money from them to put those shirts out, but they actually make them to order, so we don't have a bunch of inventory that we're sitting on.
They're flying off the shelves.
Yeah, we've sold some already. So I appreciate whoever it is that bought them, and please buy more because it does help us out a little bit.
And I would call out Chris in Canada. You need to buy one so we can be across the border with that shirt.
There you go, yeah. And if you buy one and you wear it someplace special, send us a picture and on Twitter or whatever, and show us where you're wearing that shirt. I cannot wait to see the first person wearing one because
I like it.
It'll make me feel good. So.
I like it. I like it. Hey, looking around the American, Houston rolls along 40-16 over Cincinnati. That was a pretty good primetime game Thursday night. Houston continues to roll. And, some props to UConn. They knocked off the ACC's Virginia Cavaliers. So anytime you can get one of those wins against a P5 school, good for UConn.
When I saw that score, I was thinking Virginia has to be really bad this year.
I didn't say that they weren't.
Horrible.
Yeah. Other American winners, Memphis knocked off Kansas.
Yeah.
Tulsa, SMU, the Cows won. In league play, Navy beat Tulane. Some losers, though, in the league. Temple lost at Penn State. East Carolina fell at South Carolina. Both of those games were within a touchdown. Would have been nice to get those upsets. And as mentioned, FIU, they're 0-3. They lost 21-13 at UMass. They have put up, by the way, 13, 14, and 13 points in each of their games. So that gives you an indication of their struggling offense. Key American games next week. More opportunities for the American to make a mark against the P5 schools. TCU's at SMU. FSU. Golly, can you imagine that one? They just got pummeled by Louisville. They go to the Cows. Boy, who do you root for there? I guess you got to root for Florida State.
Absolutely.
Knock off South Florida, yeah.
Absolutely.
Syracuse at UConn. East Carolina is at Virginia Tech. Also coming ahead in UCF World, the Knightline Planner. Men's golf opens its season Monday, September 19th in Hartford, Connecticut at the Hartford Hawks Invitational. This is going to be a good one if you're not doing anything Wednesday night. Volleyball, the Tampa school comes over to the venue at 7 o'clock. League play gets underway then. Men's soccer, home match Wednesday, September 21. Head-to-head, though, with volleyball. I hate to see when they schedule up against each other against North Florida at the soccer complex. Volleyball again, Friday night, Memphis at the venue. Cross country travels to Gainesville. They're participating in the Mountain Dew Invitational Saturday, September 24. Men's soccer back home again. The Cows come back over to the UCF soccer complex Saturday, September 24. Men's golf, I love this one, is in Valentine, Nebraska, beginning Sunday, September 25 for the Jackrabbit Invitational.
That's good.
Jackrabbit.
Yeah, this next thing that's on the list here, just really, do we have to talk about this?
Yeah, it was not good.
I just don't. I don't even want to talk about it, to be honest with you. Go ahead.
As the world turns.
The latest on Big 12 expansion. Hey, Andrew, are we in yet? No, not in yet. ESPN.com reporting Oklahoma's president, Big 12 board chair David Boren, said Big 12 expansion is, quote, not a sure thing, and he is, quote, not certain there will be any decision on expansion at the league's next board meeting in October.
Our team hasn't talked about it one time. We're not going to talk about it.
Thank you, Scott.
I think he's quoting you, too.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it. We'll talk about it when it happens.
Okay.
Or if it doesn't happen. Either way, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
If you haven't found out already. But I'm sure you will. But that's really when I want to talk about it. When it either does or doesn't happen. And I'm not interested in talking about it besides that. I'm sorry, y'all. Trace will talk about it, though. So.
I've spoken all I want to on that. Yeah. That's what I have to share.
All right, so Knights in the NFL. Blake Bortles not having a good game.
No.
At all.
No, he got some yards and some touchdowns in garbage time, but Boomer Esiason blasted him at halftime of the game, saying, Blake, you got to stop making so many mistakes floating the ball over the middle of the field.
That's not good. Latavius Murray, what happened with him?
He had a touchdown.
That's good.
I don't. We got caught up
for the
recording
hated
podcast.
Raiders.
Yeah.
And then quiet day for Brashad Perryman, 2 catches for 32 yards as the Ravens rallied for the win over the Browns, which, that's good. At least he's out there playing because, last year he wasn't, so the entire year. And then just another day at the office for Brandon Marshall. The Jets wideout catches 6 catches for 101 yards, and that's that. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports. Men's soccer finally gets a win. Saturday's decisive 4-1 victory over Jacksonville. The Knights are now 1-3. Earlier in the week, UCF fell 3-1 to Florida Gulf Coast.
Senior Jayla Hervey's 1,000th kill, the 11th UCF volleyball player in program history to hit that milestone, helped UCF to a 5-set win over Central Michigan and the weekend sweep of the UCF Challenge. The Knights are now 10-3. Real quick, Andrew, I'll buy you a beverage of your choice if you can tell me either of these two things. What sport athlete is the most famous Central Arkansas athlete, graduate, and what's the nickname for Central Arkansas? That's who UCF beat up over the weekend in that volleyball tournament. Do you know the answer to either one of those questions?
The inbreds?
No kidding here. The Sugar Bears.
Oh, wow.
They're the Central Arkansas Sugar Bears.
I don't know if you know about Arkansas, but there's some weird stuff going on down there in them hills.
And their most famous athlete, and this is courtesy of Jeff Sharon, who shared this with me at the volleyball game as he does the PA announcing, Scottie Pippen.
Really?
Went to Central Arkansas.
There's a lot of uncles and dads that are the same person down there, I think.
All right. No frosty beverage. You didn't get those trivia questions.
It's all good. Women's golf takes 4th place at the Madison Rudolph Championship in Nashville. Alabama, Northwestern, and SMU finish on top.
All right. Women's soccer. I'm following this on Sunday night now. UCF is at number 4, Florida. The Gators jumped out to a 2-0 lead. And then Morgan Ferrara has scored for UCF, and UCF has scored again. They have tied things up at 2-2 in the 74th minute. That would be a pretty huge victory on the road at number 4 Gainesville. UCF, that's the 3rd top 10 team they have played this year.
Awesome. Sounds good for them. Junior men's tennis transfer Corey Lovett ranked preseason number 51 according to the 2016 Oracle ITA Collegiate Tennis Men's Division I preseason rankings. Lovett comes to UCF from Alabama.
Cross country up at 13 now in the South region. Latest U.S. Track and Field and Cross Country Coaches Association regional rankings.
The old Wayne Dench building has been vacated on the UCF campus. That's where a lot of the sports offices were still being housed. The Orlando Business Journal reports that UCF is raising money to expand the current Dench facilities by the stadium. And I've heard that a lot of those offices that were in there are actually in the Roth Tower now.
That's not too bad, is it?
But they have to clean up their thing before the football games and then set their offices back up. That has to
that must wear on them. Yeah, raising a lot of money out at UCF. They had the big event out there Friday night for all of the Knightline listeners across the country that don't keep up with it as closely in Central Florida, but they've hit their $20 million goal to towards the downtown campus, and they've launched the Ignite campaign where they're trying to raise $500 million.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a little bit of change in the couch cushions right there.
Yes, it is. All right, this has been episode number 80 of the UCF Knightline podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure you tune in next Saturday night, the 24th, after the FIU game on Rabble.tv, and we will talk to you then. I'm Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trace Trylko. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Charge on to the field. With our spirits, we'll never yield. Black and gold.